Welcome, folks, to this week's edition of Tech Sales Advice. I'm, of course, your host, Chris White, and this is the LinkedIn Live program for technical sales professionals and technical sales leaders. And folks, these are live conversations. As I like to say, by design, these conversations are unscripted, unrehearsed, and unpredictable. And I am back after a long departure. I've literally been traveling the world. I was in Doha, Qatar, and Dubai, and Dallas, and Boston. I've literally been all over the place, and I haven't been here in this venue for about 5 weeks. So it's nice to be back. I hope we'll have a lot of participation. As always, if you have any questions for myself or my guest, please feel free to ask. And of course, if you just want to say hello, please feel free to say hello. Today's guest is someone who I actually met about a year ago at DemoFest. I was just taking a sip out of my DemoFest mug, and I'll be back at DemoFest here in about a month. Her name is Heather Horville. She is a solutions consultant with Greenphire, and she recently went through a RIF and the struggle of trying to find a job in this difficult market. She had some personal challenges going on as well. She posted probably 3 or 4 months ago, before she had landed her new job, with just words of frustration and frankly, what sounded like words of despair, but also words of hope and encouragement. And she shortly thereafter landed this job. And since then, she has posted a few times trying to encourage others. And I reached out to her and said, Heather, I think your story is one that needs to be heard and one that needs to be told. So here we are. Heather, thank you so much for being here. It's a delight to have you. I see your beautiful children in the picture behind you. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to kind of talk about my journey. So
yeah, well, it's a delight to have you. So Heather, I introduced you as a solution consultant with Greenphire. Yeah. Do you mind taking just a minute and telling a little bit about your story, a little bit about your journey in? I think everybody tends to have a unique journey into pre-sales, into technical sales. Yeah. Do you mind sharing your journey a little bit, and then some of the ups and downs that you experienced, over the past year or so?
Yeah, absolutely. So really returning to kind of corporate world in general, quite a few years ago, a friend worked for a small company called Way Up. That was a startup in the HR tech world, and pulled me into a part-time position while I was also working at my children's school. So kind of all over the place a little bit, building my professional career back up after becoming a single mom. So lots of wheels turning, but jumped in there, fell in love with that company and the people I worked with. Ended up working there full time. So really dove into the HR tech world. It wasn't until Way Up was acquired by my previous company, Yellow, and I found the role of a solutions consultant as a role that I could, hop into full time, that I even knew what pre-sales was. So, I hear this all the time, especially with guests on your show. It's, you don't really know what it is until you discover it. And then it was like the light bulb went off for me. I have a really eclectic work background. I've done marketing. I've done sales. I've taught. I've had my own dance school. I've had a lot of different experiences. This was the first role that I felt brought everything together. I could really apply all of those skills that I have learned, even like some really random ones, in these conversations. So,
such as what you said, even some really random ones. So now you've piqued my interest. Such as what?
Yeah, I mean, if something comes up in a sales call and someone brings up snowboarding or dancing, or, they're having an issue with their cell phone. Like I worked for Verizon Wireless for a little while. There's all of these little tidbits from your life that you can apply in these conversations. And dealing with people in all of these different industries, different facets, really come into play in these conversations, because you get dozen different personalities in one day, that you're speaking to. So some really interesting roles that I've had and experiences that I've had, even personally. My parents both have their own businesses and are really interesting people. So it's really makes me feel like I can bring everything that I have to the table. So that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. It's such an interesting perspective and such a good one. People have heard me say countless times over the years, people buy from people. And
Yeah.
so the more we can be authentically human in our roles and authentically human in our jobs, the more likely are that people will want to work with us
Yeah.
and feel a connection. They may or may not buy from us, but they're more likely to want to look for a reason to buy from us
Yeah.
if they like who we are. And I just so love the fact that you recognize that this is a role where you can bring your interesting background, dance, Verizon, owning your own shop, obviously you have children,
Mhm.
etc. So something I don't recall if I mentioned to you when you and I spoke last is my wife was a single mother for 17 years.
Yeah.
So I have a great deal of respect for her and what she did for a number of years. And certainly I have a great deal of respect for yourself and anyone
Thank
else who
you.
finds themselves in that situation. It's a tough thing to deal with, and I do believe that only people who can handle the weight of that situation on their shoulders are put in that position, and clearly you're somebody who can handle the weight of that situation. So talk a little bit more about when you found out that you were, I guess, on the wrong side of a RIF, if I can use that term.
Yep.
What were some of the emotions that you sort of dealt with and went through when that happened?
Yeah, so I was already going through a lot. A few months prior, about 2 months prior, almost a year ago, my mom almost passed away. She was struck very suddenly with autoimmune encephalitis, which is a lot of terms, but took us all by surprise. And we
Mm.
kind of launched our entire family into taking care of her and first finding a diagnosis and trying to figure out what was going on. We were a day away from losing her per the doctors, and it was a shock for all of us. She's our rock in a big way. So that was really already happening. My team at my former company, I'm still very close with. I hope to remain forever friends with them. We were a very tight-knit crew. And they were so supportive, and I was still able to do my demos and, do what I needed to do. But they really threw full support in my way to help, be there for my family. So that was already going on. I even received a promotion in that time to senior solutions consultant. So, everything was very much on track and going well.
Yeah.
And the company had some reductions in force already in the past year or two, but I felt like we were in a good place. And, when that day in January came, when just the meeting thrown on your calendar and kind of like, I wasn't the only one there. I was one of many, unfortunately. And we all understand how these things go. Companies have to do what they have to do. I didn't have any ill will towards my company. I was always so grateful. And I always say I would have been a lifer there had I been able to. I loved the mission. I loved who I worked with. And had a lot of gratitude for that job. But I couldn't breathe. It like knocked the wind out of me. And my first instinct was, I had also just gotten remarried, and my husband was also going through a career change. So we were relying on that job for our family. And so it just knocked the wind out of my sails, like I said. And it was a shock. It was really, really difficult, but I immediately got on the bandwagon of like apply, look, and was swept into this market that was another shock to the system, to be honest. And was just, but my immediate feelings to get back on track with that is, how are we going to do this? How am I going to take care of my kids? My mom's not doing well. Like the floor fell out from under me, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I know, like, I tried to lean in. I have a wonderful support system around me. My husband's incredible. My family is incredible. And they all said, but you'll be fine. Everything's going to be great. Like, you're going to find a job really soon. Everything's going to be okay. Don't panic. But it's really hard not to panic, especially
Mm,
when you're putting out 10 applications a day and not even hearing back and not
yeah,
getting interviews. And unemployment is only so long. And, so
yeah,
it was very stressful. It was a very stressful time. I tried to lean in to really be grateful for all the positives
yeah,
in my life. And my mom was starting to do better. She's doing a lot better now,
yeah,
thankfully. So there were still positives that I was trying to hang on to, trying
yeah,
to focus on my kids, trying
yeah,
to, oh, I have more time to spend with them. And I'm able to be at different events that I wasn't able to take off work for, et cetera. So,
yeah,
there's always a silver lining in things. But it's really hard to know when that silver lining is going to hit. So it was definitely stressful.
yeah. What do you think was the key to maintaining that resilience? Because it took you, so you ended up on the wrong side of the RIF
Hmm.
in January, and you landed your new job in what, August? Is that about the right time frame?
Yeah, end of July, and then started in August.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So let's call it. We'll round it up to 8 months, or call it 7 months. So it's 7 months of probably some difficult emotions, some difficult times. As you reflect on that time now, what do you think were the keys to maintaining that attitude and being resilient?
I think a lot of it was just, I have to do this. Like something has to happen. And kind of like a little bit of faith, but also while you're going through a crisis of faith because of everything that happened, but like, no, there's got to be, my job's there, it's out there. It's just not my time. And it will be though. And the right job will fit. And maybe there are reasons I don't know why all of these almost didn't happen.
Yeah.
There were a lot of almost, even like about to get offer letters and the job closed, and like,
Mm,
things like that were happening that really were just constant shocks to the system. But I think leaning into just sheer determination, like I have, like something has to happen. Um, I mean, I was even ready to go, apply at Starbucks or a local store. They have great benefits. So I'm like, sure, why not?
right.
Um, just keep going was really kind of what was on my mind. And leaning into, okay, if I have this time, how do I best prepare myself?
Mm,
Because the nature of the pre-sales roles are also changing, and more engineering skills are required, or more implementation skills are required, or they want pre and post sales and your experience. So I was also running into all these skills that I
yeah.
needed to build. So
Yeah.
throwing myself into that as well, like, all right, well, fine, I'm just going to take this time and make myself the best SC that I can by attending your lives or everyone else's webinars on LinkedIn, participating, reading all the books again that I've read and more. So leaning into that as well.
Yeah. And my hunch, I'm trying to put myself in that situation, and to a certain degree, being where I am now professionally, which is running my own business. And
Hmm.
as I like to tell people, that this business that I'm running, it's only as good as the workshops that I have on the calendar, the opportunities that I have in the pipeline, and the money that the business has in the bank. And,
Yeah, it's
and
not less work.
all of those things have an expiration date, right?
Hmm.
All of those things have an end date. So there's a constant, I call it the constant grind.
Hmm.
And every day and every week you have to wake up with a certain amount of determination, and it can be exhausting, and we have to do things that recharge our battery so that we can wake up with that sense of determination. What did you do? What did you find was helpful for you to recharge that battery so that you could wake up and go, basically, I mean, step into battle on a daily basis, right? I mean, that's sort
Yeah.
of what it feels like a little bit, right?
Yeah. I became re-inspired by the work. I mean, listening to people on your show and and really diving into a lot of those resources, reading other people's stories. Obviously I've spent a lot of time on LinkedIn every day.
course.
And that became one of my greatest pieces of armor in the whole quest of it all. But really kind of being re-inspired, like, when I do land my job, I'm going to really lean in and be so excited to do all of this and apply some of these things. And also my family. I mean, moms our kids become our why, and dads too.
Amen.
They're our why, and they had so much just positivity and faith and like, well, you're the best and you're going to find the best job ever. But also like, we like that you don't have a job and you don't have to travel or leave or have meetings, like,
Right.
so.
That's great. That's so good. Heather, let me push our pause button just for a moment. Folks, I'm speaking to Heather Horville. She is a solution consultant with Greenphire. We're talking about her journey and primarily focused on the year 2024. She closed out the year 2023 pretty much on top of the world, at least professionally. She had a great job. She was dealing with the emotional challenges of her mother was going through some illness. And then sort of the floor dropped out from under her when she learned that she was on the wrong side of the RIF. And she found a way to maintain a positive attitude, be resilient, fight the good fight. And it took her about 7 months, but she landed that job, and it is a job that she absolutely loves now. Heather, let's get a little bit. And by the way, folks, if any of you out there want to say hello, please feel free to do so. If you have any questions for Heather or myself, of course, please feel free to ask. Heather, as you reflect on the job search itself,
Mm-hmm.
was there something at some point that you started doing differently that you think tipped the scales in your favor? And if so, what was that? And what advice might you give for someone who maybe finds themselves in your situation? Maybe they've been looking for 3, 4, 5 months and they're still not finding that next role.
Yeah, I always believed in networking. I think I've gotten most of my jobs through knowing people. I think every job I can think of in my history. So I leaned into networking in the beginning, and then it's very easy to just get caught up in the process of applying. What I didn't do is I didn't lean into a lot of the AI tools that are in existence today, and kind of always meant to and just didn't. I could have had my resume rewritten and done those kinds of things, but I really just didn't. I don't know why. Something was like, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. But networking, I really feel changed the game. And not just networking with my former coworkers who were so supportive and really helped, and sending me job links and introducing me to people. They were such a great resource. But like I said, like attending your shows and dropping comments and asking questions. And I genuinely wanted to, but I would find that people would respond to my question and LinkedIn message me and connect with me. And then they knew of a job posting and they would send it to me. Peter Cohan's another fellow that I love following and learned so much from. And I was attending his webinars and doing the same thing on my own, like I said, on my own kind of journey of wanting to just stay fresh and learn more skills. But I found that it was really an amazing way to meet more people.
Yeah.
And the more that I built my LinkedIn kind of following and followers, and then some of my posts started like getting that 5 minutes of LinkedIn fame a little bit, which was just strange, but great. People noticed me more. And honestly, my current boss, who is amazing, he was searching one day. The ATS at Greenfire had actually weeded my resume out because I didn't have industry experience.
Interesting.
So he was like, well, I don't, all of these candidates, they're not what I'm looking for. And he came on LinkedIn one day and I popped up. So that's really how that even began. So he was able to find my application, saw that I had already applied, and started the interview process. So that was an amazing way that activity on LinkedIn really does have an effect. The right people, everyone in these industries is on it for one way or another, with one purpose or another. So that really helped. So that would be my main thing, is get your education and some of these free resources that are out there through webinars, through the people you can follow and the content you can consume, and then be active in it. Don't just, and if you make a comment, make it a good one. Put some thought into it, ask a complicated question. So that's really, I think, something that I would guide people to do for sure.
Yeah, I think it's really good advice. And I think you alluded to this. I'll double click on it. It's not always easy, right? It's not always easy to put yourself out there, right?
No, it's really not.
And how did was it just a sense of determination for you? Did you find that you thought, well, I don't feel comfortable doing this, but I just got to do it. So sometimes you just close your eyes and sort of push it out there and see what happens, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you're like a personal friend and have my Instagram, like I share memes, and I'm a heart on my sleeve kind of person. So I have a little bit more, freedom to share on more personal platforms, but LinkedIn to me is still very much a professional platform.
Of course.
And I always have that caveat and that filter anyway, even on Facebook, LinkedIn, like anyone can see this at any time. Nothing is really secure on the internet. So always have, if you're a professional, always have a professional mindset. Don't share too much. But on LinkedIn, I was like, I see these posts where people are saying, and it broke my heart. And I thank God every day that I didn't get to such a state of desperation that I have seen other people post about losing their home, not being able to pay their mortgage for a year. I was really scared because I did run out of unemployment for several weeks and I didn't have income coming in. And, but I still didn't get to those points that I saw people post. So I felt like I shared as much as I felt comfortable sharing. I didn't say that I ran out of unemployment and that I was literally, almost at bare minimum, but I did see a lot of other people post, and I just thought they were so brave. So it really helped me feel more comfortable and just resharing, hey, I'm still here. I'm still looking, please help. And, so it definitely gave me bravery to do that more when I see other people really leaning into it.
Yeah. Well, you use the word bravery, and hopefully others who might be listening now or might catch this recording will be inspired by your courage and your bravery. Clearly and everybody has a unique situation. You certainly had a particularly difficult and unique situation. Now, when you started building your presence on LinkedIn, did you ever struggle with imposter syndrome at all?
Not really. I mean, a little bit. I kind of felt like, especially like doing this live, I'm like, no one wants to hear me talk. So a little bit, I guess that would qualify. But I just authentically share. I'm not going to say something I don't believe in. I'm not going to say something that I don't have. Like if someone were to ask me a counter question, I couldn't answer it. So I didn't feel like I stepped too far out of my comfort zone, that was too much of an issue. But I do have that sometimes, in my work life. I think it's really easy to be like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. I'm training for a new position and learning new software and expected to demonstrate it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'll be able to do this. I know I will. I am more than prepared, but it's one of those things where you have that doubt.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but it's important, even when those doubts come up, or even if you do feel that imposter syndrome, do it anyway. It's like, that's always my thing.
Yeah. It's interesting. I know for me, it's ironic. Some of the posts that I have put on LinkedIn in fact, most of the posts that I put on LinkedIn that have gotten the most, whatever, traction, clicks, reactions, whatever the metrics are, usually are relatively personal posts that involve maybe a picture of myself and me sharing something about myself. And those are invariably the most difficult posts for me to put out there. And in fact, there was one post that I put out. This is probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I think it was a picture of me on stage, and I was saying something like, my favorite thing about being a sales engineer is being on stage in front of an audience. What's yours? I think I stared at the post button for about 30 minutes before I actually hit post, because I kept sort of asking myself, well, am I just trying to draw too much attention to myself? And but I think you're right. I think if we're authentic, we have a point of view. And I think you said this too. You mentioned complex questions, well thought out comments and observations. Don't just post to post. Don't just post to be visible. Have a point of view, have a perspective, and something that might be valuable for somebody, or something that might be provocative, something that some people might disagree with, and start a conversation, right? And I think the more courage, and this is in this market, this is what's going to help you stand out.
Absolutely.
Because there are a lot of people that are out there looking for work.
Yeah, it's I absolutely agree. I think even if you don't have anything to say, share someone else's post and ask a question in the post. And, oh, this is my thoughts on this. What do you think? And help someone else's content also at the same time. You don't have to come up with something super clever every day, and people see through it. I think even when talking before about, being honest and authentic, like with your experience, or people sell to people, it's a full circle there. I think it works in both ways, whether you're posting online or in a sales call. People can see through, when you're trying too hard, or the facade. It's like a kid trying to be too cool on the playground. Everybody can see right through it and want to hang out with the kid that's just like, hey, whatever, I'm just me. Which we're trying to go through with our kids right now. So, it's very true. If the more authentic you are, the more people do connect to that, and they feel more safe to be authentic themselves.
Yeah. One of my favorite sayings, motive is transparent. So if we have a sincere motive to just put value out into the world and start conversation and share a point of view and see what others seem to think. And I absolutely love what you just said about help other people boost their message, right?
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, that's why I invite guests to come on this show. When I started doing LinkedIn Live, I did the first few just myself, and I found that I don't want to listen to myself talk. I'm far more interested in bringing somebody else on and letting them tell their story. And I learn from all of my guests probably as much as the people listening learn from my guests, right?
Yeah.
So the more we can be active on LinkedIn in ways that promote others.
Yeah.
And in an authentic way with the right intent.
Yep.
The more we're naturally promoting ourselves, but in a positive way. So.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite leaders are the ones that, like the saying says, turn around and put a hand out to the person behind them. And that is always obvious to me. I think there are a few people, especially in the corporate world, that kind of dupe everyone and put off that facade when it's not true. I think they really stand out. And even if success can maybe take a little longer, it just shines a lot brighter at the end of the day. So I really love, that sentiment.
It's incredibly well said. So Heather, let me push our pause button one more time. Folks, I'm speaking to Heather Horville. She is a solutions consultant with Greenphire. We're talking about her journey through a RIF and then battling through some of the negative thoughts that creep into the mind when you're feeling a touch of despair, and what she has been through to land what she now loves in a job. Heather, I'm curious. How has this experience over the past 8 or 9 months, how has that changed how you now approach the job, if at all?
Yeah. That's a good question. I am really throwing myself into a lot of the shoulda, woulda, couldas, right? That I felt after being laid off. I think, okay, you have to realize that, especially when, you're not being fired, it's a reduction in force. There were other people let go as well. You also have to remind yourself of that situation, and that even when other people are expressing, you were a wonderful employee, your performance was excellent. You hear that, but it's really hard to not internalize that and think I wasn't good enough. And I wasn't valuable enough. So that was a huge part of that time as well. And so now, really kind of thinking through everything that I thought, well, I could have done this better. I could have done that more. I should have leaned into this training a little bit harder. And all of those thoughts, I'm really kind of just materializing them and proving it to myself as well that I did have the skills necessary, and let me show them. So kind of really putting more emphasis into those thoughts where I did do that, self-evaluation and felt that I could have done better. Whether it was really obvious or not, you take your own accountability as much as possible. I believe in that. So really leaning into those things and trying my best at them. So.
Yeah. I've heard it said, and I've said it on this show before, we are all the CEOs of our own career.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have to take ownership. As you were speaking, the other thought that came to mind for me is, maybe one of the ways to make ourselves a little bit more resilient in bracing, for lack of a better term, for bracing for the potential for a RIF is maybe not having so much of our own self-identity tied up in our job and what we do. Because at the end of the day, you're right. It wasn't a reflection of you personally or you individually. You just ended up, as I like to say, you just ended up on the wrong side of the dividing line.
Yeah.
And there are going to be people on one side of the dividing line and people on the other side of the dividing line. And oftentimes there are two equally qualified people or more than two equally qualified people, and they just have to draw a line somewhere, right? Yeah. It's very hard not to take that personally. But I think the more we can learn to do so, the more equipped we are to hit the ground running and go find the next one. I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with you. I take everything personally. It's part of my DNA. So that was one of the hugest struggles for me, especially when you see a lot of the conversations on LinkedIn. Look at this tech industry the last 2 years, and people are, have been laid off for over a year, and more layoffs are announced, I feel like, every day. And at least for a while, I feel like they've slowed a little bit, and I'm thankful for that, but maybe I'm not seeing as much. But anyway, you see these layoffs all the time, and the conversation is some people saying, well, I wouldn't want to hire someone who was laid off because they weren't valuable. And then people debating that, but you see this debate and you see the comments on both sides, and it's really hard not to personalize it, not to internalize it, and see these hard-hitting comments and not really, make them weigh you down. So I feel like a lot of those conversations can really push you in the opposite direction. So it's really important. For me, I had a lot of people in my corner, friends and family, like, oh, you are good enough. Like, just don't even entertain that, look at all of your experience and be creative, look for other roles right now if that's not working, so much support, but not everybody has that. So you really do. And at the end of the day, they're not the voice in your head. And you need to make sure, and I'm not always good at this. This is something I struggle with all the time, but you need to make sure the voice in your head is pushing you forward, and you are telling yourself that you are good enough and you will be, the right candidate for the right job. And, so that's really important too. Sometimes you have to ignore some of what you see, lean into the positive, whether you believe it or not, kind of fake it till you make it, and really kind of edit that voice in your head.
It is such a powerful message. Edit the voice in your head. The term that I like is the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Are the stories we are telling ourselves, are they positive? Are they moving us forward, or are they negative? And if they're negative, we need to put them on the table and be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Because you're right. There's only so many things we can control, right?
Yeah.
What we think, what we say, what we do. The list about ends there.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So,
seek out, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Seek out help for that if you need it too. I'm a big proponent for counseling. I think even if your life is wonderful, everybody should seek out some type of support, whether it be coaching, mentoring, therapy, counseling. One of the great tools my counselor actually gave me was, or a counselor gave me, because I saw more than one for different things. But when you have those negative thoughts and you are spinning, envision a giant red stop sign in your mind and stop yourself and reconfigure, right? But that imagery, so the more you practice it, you'll throw up your own red stop signs. Your brain will do it for you. So there are tools out there like that seem silly, but are simple. But I do think people, especially in this industry, in this market, going through these, do need to reach out for extra tools, because we can't always do it ourselves.
Yeah. That being said, you strike me as someone who would be willing and open to have people reaching out to you if maybe they needed just a word of inspiration, a word of encouragement. I know you're not a counselor, you're not a therapist, you're not a counselor, and you have a full-time job and you're a mother and you've got lots of things going on. But is it fair to say that if anybody happens to catch this recording, maybe feels like they could use someone to just get some words of inspiration, you'd be willing to let them reach out to you?
Absolutely. I've had a few people, pop into my messages already, and absolutely, I would love that. My biggest love in this life is loving other people, and I get a lot of my own strength from that. So if I'm able to help someone, it would mean the world to me, and it would really fuel me to keep going with my own journey.
Yeah. Another one of my favorite sayings, and I know I've got a lot of them.
I got a lot.
We are most satisfied when serving other people.
Absolutely. So I heard another, I read a great article, and I don't believe if it was on LinkedIn or maybe on Instagram, but it was about when you are faced with a problem, the best way to overcome that problem is to help someone else going through the same thing. You don't have to have solved it yet. You don't have to have an answer yet. But when you turn around, it's like teachers learn the material they're teaching. Like I'm sure with your course, which I love, by the way, because I'm in it and I love it. But when you teach something, you learn it on a different level. Your brain actually locks it into permanent memory and processes it on such a different level. Yeah. And it's the same with helping someone. So if you're struggling with someone, whether it's personal or professionally, if you turn around and try to help someone, not like I know what I'm talking about, but hey, I'm also struggling with this, let's try and figure it out. It was amazing, even the scientific research on it, how much you're able to solve that problem faster, more efficiently, better than you would have. So I loved that too. I thought that was
amazing. Really cool. It's amazing how the mind is almost more inspired to go to work to help others than it sometimes is to help ourselves. Yeah. And I think it's because that sometimes there's just so much static there. Whereas when we're focused on helping somebody else, we sort of forget about ourselves, and yet we're helping them. I actually did a LinkedIn Live with a gentleman named John Sequeira probably a year or two ago. I don't know if you happen to catch that one or not.
I believe I have. I recognize his name.
Well, I'll remind you his story. His story is he was on, I want to say, the 57th floor of the North Tower when it was hit by a plane. Mm-hmm. And they were trying to he and his boss were trying to make their way down, and their colleagues were trying to make their way down the stairs. And they heard some commotion behind a door in one of the stairs, and they went to find out what the problem was.
Yeah.
And there was a woman in a wheelchair, and the people there couldn't figure out how to get her down. So my friend John and his boss, they decided to take it upon themselves to find a way to get her down. And they found another stairway, and they made it out literally seconds before
Wow.
the building crumbled. And,
Yeah.
and they have, these, and he was on Oprah, and then he wrote a book and the whole thing. But his message is, Chris, I made it out of that building for one reason and one reason only, because I was focused on helping this woman in the wheelchair, and I stopped caring about myself. That's
Yeah.
the only reason. Because had he stayed, his other colleagues didn't make it, because those people on that stairway didn't make it out. And he said, Chris, so when we are focused on helping others, we invariably help ourselves.
That gives me goosebumps. It's so true. I really do try to live my life like that, but that story is amazingly inspiring.
Yeah.
And I know I'll even bring it full circle around to pre-sales, selling value and how you can help someone. It's not just about, right? We always say it's not just about the features. You're not selling features. You're not selling the tool even itself. You're selling its value and value-based solutions, because you are trying to help them at the end of the day. So that's another huge connection of that personal piece in me that I love about this job. I really do buy into the value and I feel it. So when we're talking about it, when you take it to that next level, and it's obviously nothing as, wonderful as John's story, but when you take it to that perspective of, I really want to help you in your everyday life, because I know what it feels like to be overwhelmed at work. And if I can help you, that's an amazing thing. When you take it to that right mentality, and really buy into it, I really feel that way. It gives me so much satisfaction. Like you said, when I know someone purchased the software and they have a good experience, I feel like a champion. And not because we got the quota or, the ARR, but because, wow, that person's going to feel so much better going to work every day. And what an amazing feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. You're improving. We are improving people's lives.
Yeah.
And again, you've probably heard me say this. Certainly some of the listeners have heard me say this. To sell is to serve. I really believe that. And if you bundle that with this idea that we are most satisfied when serving other people, how could you not love what we do? Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Heather, this has been such a delightful conversation. I had a feeling it would be. It's the reason I reached out and invited you to join me. You have such a delightful view and perspective on life, on your career. And there's zero doubt in my mind that attitude is what carried you through the clearly this difficult part of your life. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you were willing to come on and share your story as transparently as you have. Any closing thoughts or words of advice or words of encouragement for someone who, in fact, words of advice that you would give yourself about 2 or 3 weeks before you actually got that or got that response when maybe you were feeling at your lowest point?
Yeah. And I rolled my eyes at it because at the time, and that's okay. You can roll your eyes at it, if you're someone who's listening. But what's meant to be will be. If a job is truly what's meant for you, you cannot lose it. It will become yours. Even the process of how I received this job, it was, started and then the requisition closed, so they didn't proceed. But I had that feeling in my gut. It was meant to be mine. But basically everything is going to work out the way it's meant to work out. And just keep going and really trust in yourself. And I think it's, like I said, I rolled my own eyes at those messages. But everything will work out okay. And you'll find your path forward. And usually the steps on the path, if they're extra bumpy and in lava or whatever it is, and you feel like, nope, my story is just getting worse, my situation is just getting worse, you'll be able to turn around and help someone else through that one day. And so nothing is for like everything is for a reason. You will learn so much from this and be able to help others at the end of it. So hope that made sense. I felt like I was rambling, but
No, I think those are great words of advice. And as you were speaking, there were two thoughts that I had. One, the first of which is, I'm going to encourage any of you who are out there, maybe who find yourself in this situation. I'm going to encourage you to follow Heather's lead on this and be proactive on LinkedIn. Work on increasing your visibility. Share valuable opinions, points of view, comment, reshare, repost, follow people in the space like myself and Rue and others. Go to webinars, go to events.
Yeah.
Build up your visibility in the space on LinkedIn or whatever channel. And number two, take care of yourself physically. Take care of yourself mentally.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with the people and or the activities that you love. If you like to exercise, make sure you're exercising. If you like to go for walks, go for walks. If you love spending time with your pets or with your kids, spend time with your pets. I think we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves physically and mentally and emotionally during these times as well.
Yeah.
And clearly, Heather, this is something that you did, and that helped you get through that time.
Absolutely. And like you said, attend events, because I met yourself and so many other people at that demo fest I went to last November in New York City. And those connections, and even knowing, some of these pages and these events existed, changed the game for me in my job search. And it was really what helped that visibility.
Yeah. By the way, I'll be there in about a month. Are you going to be there?
Which is it in New York?
It's in New York City.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think I was going to maybe attend the networking event. So we will see. Okay. I have to line logistics up.
Oh, good. Well, I hope to see you there. Yeah. Heather, thank you so much for being here. Folks, for those of you who stuck around for the session live, thank you so much for being here. Of course, you can always follow Tech Sales Advice on LinkedIn. You can go to techsalesmastery.com if you want to learn more about what we do professionally to help sales organizations. And of course, we will be back next week with another edition of Tech Sales Advice. Heather, hang around backstage just for a minute before we part ways. To everyone else, we will see you next week.
Thanks
all.